Andy, Derek, can you hear us? Andy and Derek.
There, I got you.
Oh, there's Derek. Is Andy there?
I am.
Oh, good, good. Welcome, gentlemen. I'm not seeing Scott Marshall.
Scott checked out last Friday. I think he's off for a week's vacation. Said he
Oh,
was going to be out and would be back to work on Monday. Last
Oh,
message I got.
I did not know that. So thank you two gentlemen for joining us. Let's start with Andy with the subcontractor contracts list. You
Okay.
had sent that to me late this afternoon, and
Yes.
I just kind of briefly put it in front of the board. And so if you could kind of talk us through that, I'd really appreciate it.
Okay. Single sheet based on our budget format. I've just taken all the detail lines out so I can list the division name, I'm going to say the low indicated subcontractor for award. And then the other vendors off to the right in the big section there are people outside of the low responsive or indicated subcontractor. Top of the page, right under our logo, it starts off with the various builders exchanges and plan rooms that the project was advertised in. Started with Eugene and to Salem and the Contractor Plan Center in Portland right off the bat. Then the Klamath Exchange called and wanted access so that they could identify it to their folks in Klamath Falls who may have a representation locally. And then finally, we had contact with FW Dodge, another construction-related organization out of Portland, who also hits multiple trades, multiple locations. You'll see the note in there. Excuse me, my dog's getting a little out of hand here. Sorry about that. I got to get the dog out of the house. You'll see the note there. It says multiple hits, multiple trades. It's just an indicator that as advertised, the plans went in with scopes of work that we were looking for numbers on. Any number of individual companies opened it up. That's our hit. Looked at the package. And again, it was multiple trades. Not all of them interested. It just means they looked at it. And if they were interested, they would submit a bid or give a call back. But not a lot of feedback coming back out of the exchanges. We did reach back out after the bids were due, got lists of those same names and started contacting people to find out why. We've already talked about that earlier meetings, why people didn't put a number in. It was too small, too far away. Some of it, a couple of comments about the political climate that they were aware of. So you move down into the details, and I tried to do this in a red, yellow, green format, if you would. Green being centered on Corvallis primarily. So it's color and location centric. The yellow being a bandwidth.
Andy,
Yes.
we don't have it in color. It's black and white for the board.
Oh, great.
Sorry.
Okay. I'll get a color one out to everybody. Trying to, let's see, how do I do this? Well, I could go down division name and line item by line item, and I can just go through the Corvallis subcontractors that we reached out to, if that would help.
Does the board want that level of detail, or is this just looking at it?
I think
It's up to you guys.
well, for me, this is helpful to see who all was outreach to and where we had, I guess.
I think the color one would help a little bit because it does give you an idea in a centric manner. You've got Corvallis as the core that was green. The yellow bands would be from, say, Corvallis out to Salem, Kaiser area on the north, Eugene on the south. The red bands beyond that go beyond those to, say, Roseburg, Portland. We have a sub from Walla Walla, Washington. We had a special inspection firm from Boise, Idaho. They backed out of it. We now have a local vendor in FEI testing out of Corvallis.
I will say on the Boise, Idaho one, that's Atlas. They've got offices all over Western Oregon. Their headquarters is out of Boise on that one.
And I think Scott had spoken with them when we were trying to close with them. They have an office in Corvallis, but that office did not want to come work in Alsea. It was outside their territory, quote unquote. So that's when we reached back out to FEI and brought them on board.
Can I ask a question about the sectional doors? That's the
Yes.
only one that's blank on the indicated sub. Is that something that you just haven't worked on the contract with them yet, or?
Correct. We
Or like-
haven't anointed either company yet. We haven't gone that far. We've been focusing on structure and exterior skin of the building primarily, trying to get the building up and enclosed.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
I guess the one big question I have doesn't actually have to do with this sheet quite as much. I do appreciate all this information. I appreciate you getting it all together so we can see it. I think, speak for myself again, but having this in front of me makes me feel more confident and want to speak to the community about the work that's been done. So I totally understand and appreciate you guys getting this together, and thank you. And we do have, actually, Sean does have a copy of the color
Mhm.
coded one, and I think he's gonna send that out to the board.
Do it right now.
So I do have a big question. Did you guys get any information on the electrical or HVAC mechanical engineering pieces of it that were supposed to come to you on Friday?
We did receive the drawings.
Okay.
Yes.
I'm sure we're gonna have more questions, but I just wanted to know if they even got them.
So I would preface that to Andy. We received the HVAC drawings, but I think we need to go back with Scott and ask him about a power plan for the HVAC specific drawings, because it appears we don't have the power requirements to go along with the HVAC.
The plans are also not stamped. They were a preliminary. There were still a couple of in-house questions with the design side that they were working on. I'm told they were minor ones. They're not going to change, numbers of equipment or sizes of equipment. It's just maybe some locations and some internal routing.
So the next spreadsheet that you have in front of you, and Derek, you could probably talk to this a little bit more than any of us, is you updated the budget. And the major area that I noticed you updated says budget is for a warm shell. Can you kind of take us through this spreadsheet, Derek?
Yeah, so that was based off the request to give you guys an anticipated budget for a building that we could get occupancy for. And so with that, I stripped out all the items that aren't 100% necessary to get a certificate of occupancy so that you could occupy a building. And also stripped out the items that I viewed as something that either, maybe this shop class could do or something like that. And those would be really fairly easy ones. And so the items that wouldn't be necessarily required for a certificate of occupancy would be like your painting, your finish and trim, your casework, things like that. But your big items for occupancy, your fire alarm, communications, electrical, HVAC, plumbing. Those are the big ticket items that you need to get a certificate of occupancy so that you could actually use a building. I left out doors for the most part on this because you don't technically need doors between all of those spaces. And so that was an area where I said, well, do you need doors to occupy a building on the inside? No, you don't. You just need them on the outside. And so I left in an anticipated amount for the doors on the exterior so you could create a secure building. And so that's what that is. The warm shell gives you a usable space from a certificate of occupancy standpoint. All your walls are in. Your drywall's in there. It's not taped and textured out, but you have drywall up. And so it's a usable space, but it's not a finished space.
No, but the other parts of it does.
Sorry, I can't hear you guys.
Yeah, what is the question?
Does the sheetrock have to be up for occupancy?
Yes.
Uh,
Exterior.
Fire code.
That's a conversation that we could have with the building department. I think you could get away without having drywall up. We've got a medical clinic up in Northeast Oregon that we left drywall out of, about 2,000 square feet of the building because they didn't know what they were going to do with the space. And so we left it out and we got occupancy without having to finish that space. So I think you can get away with it from the standpoint of a bunch of high schoolers and junior high kids being in there, not having drywall. I think could lead to some potential problems with kids stuffing stuff in the walls and pulling it out and just being kids.
So then I have one more question. Are these hard numbers? Are these going to be our GMPs that we need?
Yeah, so this would be your hard numbers, your GMP. I'm just pulling up my actual budget spreadsheet.
Derek, we seem to have three different figures for the Voc Center. Around 2.5 for completion, around 2.1 for warm shell, and around 1.5 for soft or cold shell. Then we have figures that you've outlined for electrical, HVAC, those sorts of things. I guess my question that I'm trying to enhance Deb's question with here is, when you say these are GMPs, what are you referring to exactly?
Bottom line.
Well, I guess I shouldn't say these are, well, so I guess I should clear up. A GMP is a guaranteed maximum price.
Yes.
And so the GMP is established once we sign a contract. The numbers that you see in here from the subs, these are hard numbers, hard bids from subcontractors. And so they are actual bids. GMPs can't be established until we actually have approval from you guys to sign a contract for a given dollar amount. That is the technical term for a guaranteed maximum price. All these numbers in here, they're not GMPs. They're hard bids that create the product of a GMP.
So from what I understand, the only GMP that we have on the table right now is from our last board meeting, and that was for a cold shell around 1.5. Is that correct?
Yes, unless you want me to put this into the same form of a contract with this value in there to establish a GMP.
Okay. Pardon me?
We didn't accept that.
No, we didn't.
So my question was,
Right.
these numbers down here on the bottom.
Uh-huh.
So my question was, these numbers down here on the bottom of this spreadsheet, under subtotal, these are the hard numbers that will create the GMP.
That's correct. Yes.
So these are the numbers we are using to do that.
Well, I actually want to add a clarification. Those, we were looking for the numbers
These ones.
for
right
the
here.
HVAC and the electrical to be able to decide if we needed to do the GMP for the cold shell
Right.
or the warm shell. I'm just gonna call them
Either
that.
or.
So the numbers I was looking at and that I was looking for clarification is here's your electrical, here's your HVAC. I don't know what this one is. I don't have my
But
glasses.
those
on.
are for the building. But this is for the school side of it, right? So this is the electrical, on the right-hand side of the page. And Derek and Andy, at any point I'm wrong, please do correct me. But on the
Oh,
left-hand
so
side of the page, oh, go ahead.
I'll clarify that for you. So based on the board meeting on Thursday last week, we indicated that we needed approximately 2 weeks to establish hard values for the HVAC upgrade at the school and the new electrical hallway upgrade. And so those numbers aren't incorporated in here yet. Now, Andy, you can step in here and correct me if I'm wrong, but the HVAC sub that we have for the VOC gave us an estimated value based on what he saw, just a rough number so far of about 350,000 to do the HVAC upgrade. Now,
Correct.
what I was caveating that with earlier is that HVAC upgrade, the drawings that Scott sent us, that's only HVAC. That doesn't have all the conduit and associated electrical wiring that it takes to get power to these mini split systems. And so we need to understand what that cost is before we can actually create a total estimate for the HVAC upgrade. And so that's the next step in the process tomorrow, because Scott's out. We've got to call the engineer and say, hey, what do you have a power plan for this HVAC upgrade? Because we don't have it and we need it so that we can establish an actual value.
So then these are not the numbers that we need for the GMP.
So the VOC
They're not
numbers
complete.
are, we would have to give them we'd have to vote and say, okay, go ahead and establish a GMP for the soft shell, or the warm
Warm
shell.
shell.
And they could go do that and bring that to us to sign. Or we could,
Or we could approve the
Approve the
cold
cold
shell.
could
'cause We
you,
already have that.
can you talk us through the consequences of approving the cold shell? And then moving towards also wanting to establish a GMP for the occupiable space, if that makes
The warm
sense?
shell.
The warm shell.
Yeah. So I think the biggest risk between the cold shell and the warm shell is in the electrical and HVAC scopes, because those prices seem to be fluctuating substantially still. The biggest risk in not going forward with the cold shell or the warm shell is the winter conditions and well, I guess just weather conditions in LC in general. So if you were to move forward with, say, the cold shell, we'd still have to order main switchgear for the building. We would still likely order the main HVAC equipment for the building, but we just wouldn't do all the interior duct work, the finish work, the wiring, all that stuff for the interior of the building. And so your main components, I think, would be, we would look at most likely ordering those. But the inherent risk is price escalation of everything else.
So then my other question that I'm still trying to clarify in my own mind is these numbers for the electrical upgrade and the HVAC system that's on this spreadsheet, are they our numbers for the GMP?
Our GMP is the
So
shell.
these are still, no, not for the voc center. but for the upgrade in the HVAC for this building.
This is their best estimate.
Right, as of today.
So these aren't, that's what I'm asking.
These
So
are not solid figures.
these are not solid figures. They're not bidded figures yet.
Correct.
Because they just got the drawings, so they needed those 2 weeks. They told us that on Thursday.
To be able to come up with the electrical and HVAC. Solid numbers.
So I guess I don't know that my question is answered. So if the board were to approve the cold shell, and then the HVAC and the electrical numbers come in, and there's money to move forward with the warm shell, how do you go forward with approving the warm shell?
So that's an easy process because we have the bids from the subs. So moving forward with the warm shells, basically, you guys vote as a board to say, hey, we request to move forward with the warm shell. What's the change order to the cold shell contract to move to the warm shell contract? Well, since we already have all the hard numbers for that, we come back and say, well, here's the add alternate to go to a warm shell from a cold shell, and this is the change order to the GMP. So the process is really pretty easy. And then we add change orders to the subcontracts for those dollar amounts. So your price doesn't increase. It's a paperwork evolution of we're adding X amount of dollars to the cold shell GMP to create a warm shell. If that makes sense.
So I have a question with the hallway. It says all these are canceled and they'll be rebid. So is that number not even, we don't even know what that number is going to be?
Yeah, so that hallway column was based off of the old hallway drawings. And we didn't receive the drawings for the updated hallway until the day of the board meeting. Or I guess the day before. And so we had no idea what was in front of us other than we knew that the hallway was shrinking somehow. And so I just put in there canceled, we'll rebid.
So those were the preliminary numbers. So this could be way lower than that.
Let's see. I did my best to come up with so when I talked with Scott and Andy, Scott said that the new electrical room was like 150 square feet, but then it required all this demolition and new retaining walls and this other stuff. And so I tried my best to come up with some kind of value for that new electrical panel room. And that's what you see in that column now. So I guess canceled, will rebid is probably not the correct thing to have in there. It should be estimate, will rebid, because the first spreadsheet I created that had the original hallway, and this was the updated based on what Scott gave us right before the board meeting last week. And I didn't change the language on there.
So I'm gonna go back to my original question. The only thing on the table at this point in terms of a GMP is a cold shell, correct?
Yes, in terms of what I sent you, in terms of an actual contract, that is correct. The document that I sent you for the warm shell, that can be turned into a GMP with a contract.
For that amount of 2.146417.17.
That's correct.
Wait, I'm sorry. I think I missed a connection there, but what we would be voting on this evening is the cold shell, which came in at 1.5,
Five and some
something.
change, yeah. 1.5,
Right? correct?
Yeah.
And then if the board adopted that, then the numbers come in for the electrical, HVAC and hallway. If there's funds, then a change order could be done to make it
to make it
occupiable
occupiable. Mhm.
Yeah, then you go
on
from,
the other dollars.
cold shell to warm shell by way of a change order.
Right.
I didn't hear what he said. You go from a cold shell to a warm shell by way of a
Change order.
Which
Now-
would take very little time.
Just paperwork.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because we have the numbers, we have the hard numbers.
Well, right, but I mean, I want to hear it from him
Oh.
because lots of times we've done some changing in paperwork and it's taken a considerable amount of time to do that.
Derek or Andy, can you talk a little bit about the change order process and what's involved with that so the board knows?
Yeah, so it's very simple. Basically, we download the AIA G701 document, put the value in the document to update to a warm shell, give it to you for signature, and it's done. It could literally take all of less than a day.
Is that what you were looking for, Linda?
Yeah, that's what I was looking for.
So so we're really voting on this because they were wanting to start concrete next week. But we were told, Derek said that they could do the concrete if we approved them to do that sub part of it. Once we got the numbers. And
Or
And that,
for the vote
that-
center?
yeah, and that was if we lost our concrete subcontractor.
if they
Because
couldn't
of
do
the
it in
delay.
the time we needed to before winter set in. I mean, we still got
Yep.
month or two before it's saturated. So that's kind of where I'm looking at is it's really just for the concrete company to start next week, or we wait till we get the GMPs.
Well, that's what I was trying to clarify.
Yeah.
Because I guess I was thinking we were gonna get different numbers, more concrete numbers, I guess I was thinking.
Yeah, what my thought was is we wanted to make sure that we were gonna get the drawings for sure so that it could go out to bid.
Yes.
Because
And
if
we have
not,
the
then it could have been
drawings.
another
They
month or
have the
whatever.
drawings,
They have.
Right.
So
They
they
have the
have the drawings
only
they're
the
not
HVAC
final.
ones. They only have the HVAC ones. They don't have the electrical ones.
because of the electrical.
And you have the hallway ones too, correct?
Correct. We have the hallway architectural drawings.
We-
We still need
Yes.
to get the structural done.
Keep in mind when we say the hallway, and correct me, Andy or Derek, if I'm wrong with this, but when we say hallway, we've got it whittled down to that power panel room only.
It basically becomes the panel room on top of a new structural foundation, which is alongside your access road down there behind the building.
Right.
And repaving of that area up to the school building that is now open, exposed, aggregate base.
Right. So here's my next question. If the board approves the soft shell tonight with the mindset of moving it to a warm shell as the figures relax, is the 2.146417.17 a solid figure, or will that deviate?
So I think that number is within probably plus or minus 2 or 3%. We didn't have the time to validate numbers with the subs. And we basically had a day and a half. Our assumptions on what it would take to go to a warm shell, but the biggest risk in that would most likely be the drywall to go to the warm shell, which I feel pretty comfortable with where we're at. The warm shell in our budget has all of your major items. And probably what I should do is I should probably give you guys a list of what it does not include. That would definitely help clarify that.
Yeah, I think that'd be good.
Sean, do you have your email open?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll send that to you. Give me just a couple minutes.
Okay.
Well, that happens, I think one of my, I actually have a question for Ryan.
So if that is 3%, I mean, we're talking around $60,000-$70,000.
Yeah, that's what I just figured out. So I have a question, Ryan, just based on your experience and and knowledge of our, our valley and doing construction here. I'm just curious what your opinion is on what you think is the best path forward. And I'm not trying to undermine any, I just want to have the conversation.
Personally, knowing the HVAC and the electrical, and if the concrete contractor runs and they're willing to step up, I still think we have time to wait for those numbers. I mean, basically, that's all we're doing this for, is if the contractor says, we're now 2 months out, then it would be into the wet season. But if CB is willing to do the concrete, then I think we're in a good spot still to wait for those numbers.
Because it's just next week. They said 2 weeks.
Let's hope.
But, well, I
But
have
some of
another
it's not
question.
done.
I have a question on that too, but.
Because they're not final drawings, and now Scott's gone, so hopefully they can get the answers from the mechanical engineers what we need. So
I'm kind of with you.
So with that, I guess, I'm trying to wrap my head around it. Andy and Derek, I feel like we asked this last time, and I apologize, I don't have my notes in front of me. The GMP is good for 1 to 2 months. Is that what you said?
Most of it, if you look at the details of the pricing from subcontractors, most of it is qualified as good for anywhere from a number of days out to 30 to 90 days in advance. Because the market is just cattywampus. It's whacked. A lot of these people will put that's a standard can format. If things or a statement on their letterheads, if they know things are moving forward and we get back to them in time, things haven't changed that bad, they will more likely than not adhere to that number. They'll stick with it. Especially so if they don't have work lined up for the winter to keep their crews busy. That's why we wanted to try to get that core or the shell of the building done so we could work inside during the winter, because it gives us a dry environment that people can work in that's much more friendly than working outside in the rain.
So have you talked, I don't know if you, a geologist or a compaction specialist, have you talked to them on when things start changing on their end?
Well, we, in the geotechnical report, talks about the type of soil we have out there. And it is somewhat expansive. And you'll notice, some of you notice, we still have a sprinkler running out there 2 or 3 days a week. We need to keep the ground moist so that it doesn't dry out completely. Then have us put the concrete on top of all that dry soil, and then have it get saturated and start to swell a little bit and create some cracking issues, either with foundations or slab. That's outside the concern with the oversaturation and then having to remove all that extremely wet material if it were to happen and replace it with good dry material so we could then come back up on top. Continue work.
So just so you know, Derek just emailed me all the warm shell exclusions list, and I just forwarded it onto the board. But if I just read it to you, it's flooring, painting, finish, trim, millwork, drywall, tape, mud, texture. It says drywall will be installed, but waiting on validation from subcontractor. Casework, interior doors, frames, hardware, specialties like toilet paper holders and towel holders, etc. Landscaping and asphalt. So those are the exclusions from full completion to warm shell.
Asphalt's kind of expensive.
What's asphalt coming in now Derek or Andy?
Well, I put asphalt's excluded in there because it's not on the drawings. It's just a gravel driveway right now, and I think there might have been some confusion before about Scott had said there was asphalt, and there wasn't asphalt in the drawings for this one.
There's a change request out in ASI to pave the driveway rather than have it rocks, as Sean put, rocks around school kids and windows are not good. But there was a request to go to asphalt and or concrete to get a comparison that we haven't got numbers back from subcontractor yet, because we've been fighting issues with, working issues to get the structure going. So we're trying to focus on getting the building started and up and running.
So just for point of clarification, there's a difference in the bed preparation between just laying down gravel versus asphalt. Am I correct on that?
Yes,
And I just want to say that I'm the one that caught that, because it's a huge student liability or district liability issue when you have gravel around kids. They love to throw gravel.
So question, and sorry if it's, maybe doesn't matter, but is it required to have asphalt? Or is it suggested?
I don't think there's any code requirement for asphalt. Am I correct on that, Andy or Derek?
correct. All we were building was a gravel surface access road into the back of the building. And the section, if you would, we would lay down a fabric material like we did on this, on what you saw out there with the rock fill. You lay that fabric material down and the gravel goes right on top of it and is compacted. So there was no excavation, there's no cut into the existing grass. To do paving section, whether it's asphalt or concrete, you have to excavate to a certain depth to get a bearing material built up with aggregate base before you can then put asphalt or concrete back on top. So that that asphalt or concrete doesn't break up down the road.
Okay, so I have another subset of questions. So given some of the information, the timelines that CB can do the concrete if the contractor cannot. I'm curious from your standpoint, Andy and Derek, what do you need to be able to do and start the process for a GMP for the electrical, HVAC and hallway? So, and the reason I'm asking this question is I want Sean to hear that because I believe that we need to have Sean stipulate this to Scott. So
Got it.
what do you need to be able to move forward on a GMP for those three other entities, the electrical, HVAC and hallway?
So the HVAC, we need a power plan for the mini split systems that are in the design documents. The hallway, I would say we're close on that. I think the only outstanding item on there is the retaining wall and how that connects into the existing building. And I'll likely do the design on that. So that'll be done tomorrow. And so we'll have the concrete out for that portion. That'll be simple.
When you say done tomorrow,
And
sorry,
then-
I'm gonna pause you right there. When you say that'll be done tomorrow, what will be done tomorrow?
The retaining wall design for the new electrical panel room.
But still, at this given point, that's something that you need.
It is, yeah.
Or are you doing the design on it, Derek?
I'm doing the design on the retaining wall.
So you're self doing that work.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I don't need to get on your case in this case.
No, I'll send you guys the details tomorrow. Probably tomorrow morning. Yeah.
Okay.
I've been trying to convert Scott's drawings to AutoCAD, and yeah, I'll have it
So,
kind of finalized for Andy to send out to our concrete sub tomorrow.
so other than the power plan for the mini splits from Scott, is there anything else you're needing?
Electrical.
Christine says electrical, is that correct?
Yeah, where are we at with the electrical upgrade?
Did we lose you?
So
Oh, there
we've
you
got
are.
out that to power suppliers on the electrical upgrade.
So that's out to bid for a GMP right now.
And how many subcontractors do you have for that?
Well, that's the one that you guys requested and we said we could take in-house on the electrical upgrade.
Okay,
We can go back to like M&W Electric or there is a local outfit that we tried to get to bid
Yeah, cold.
some other portions of the project and he didn't. Let me find his name real quick.
this KUNERT, you guys saw that bid come in for that, right? This KUNERT, inert.
Cooner.
Cooner?
So they sent us an email. Did you see that?
Yeah.
It was 1.1 million. That's why I'm asking. Because
So
this
the
one,
other, I've tried Carl Eckhold. He's apparently the electrician that you guys use there. And I couldn't get him to bid on the hallway project on the power upgrade originally.
did you see that email come in, Christine? That's why. So the reason I'm asking is because on your sheet, you have 842,000 for the electrical upgrade. And the email that this other gentleman sent us was 1.1 million.
So the electrical upgrade on ours takes into account removing the generator.
Oh, so his does not?
His original had the
No.
generator and the transfer switch with it.
I don't think we can actually look at that either because of the RFP process. He
No.
has to actually put an
Right.
RFP up through them, so. I mean,
Right.
I'm not saying that we can't look at it. I should say, I don't know that we can consider that legally at this point. I'm not sure. I'd have to. I'm not a lawyer.
That's why I was just trying to figure out the difference between this and this. Because it just didn't make sense to me for this to be 1.1 and this to be 842. So 842 is without generator,
But an estimate.
but an estimate. So when do you think you'll have the GMP for the electrical?
That's the one that we discussed last week that we needed a couple of weeks to put that together based on what we anticipate the material suppliers giving us quotes back on.
Okay,
And that's same for the HVAC, correct? You need a couple weeks for that one.
That's correct.
Does the board mind if we let Keenan speak from the bond committee side of things? What's your question?
Transformer's been ordered.
I'm not sure if you heard him, but the question is, have the transformers been ordered?
From CPI, yes.
Thank you. Okay, so the goal for, I'm just pulling up the calendar really quick. So the goal for a GMP for electrical and HVAC are both a couple weeks. Is that a correct, is that fair to say a couple weeks?
That's fair.
Okay, so a couple weeks to me reads about 2. However, Scott is out this week, so that puts anybody at a handicap of being able to ask questions, correct? Is that a fair statement?
It is, and the big handicap on that is the electrical for the HVAC system.
So that looks at us possibly best case scenario. Actually, I'm gonna say October 3rd is a full 2 weeks from the 19th. If they got no work done this week, absolutely no work got done this week, then best case scenario is we might have GMPs for the HVAC and the electrical by October 3rd.
but weren't you going to go and talk to the electrical engineer that also works with Scott and try and get those drawings?
HVAC.
I had conversation with the mechanical designer in Scott's absence and was able to squeeze him, twist his arm a little bit to get the drawings out. And I go back to the same company tomorrow morning on the electrical side.
So do you think you could, do you think that they're going to give those to you without Scott?
Scott's told them that Derek and I are a part of the program and that they're supposed to work with us and not create a problem. It
So
just
then we
depends
may
on,
not need the extra week because of Scott being gone. This other gentleman can do that.
it just depends on how far along they are with design. Yes.
If I remember right, Scott was expressing frustration with the engineers. Am I correct, Derek and Andy?
That's correct.
Yeah, it was more with the owner of the firm. It's one firm that's doing it all.
Yeah,
He's got some personal issues that are weighing heavy on his business life.
yeah. And I think that's what we're seeing here.
I think that I'll just speak for me, but I think that our holdup on voting for anything is we want to see all numbers so we don't make an error in
Mhm.
decision. For the hallway, what is your estimated time of completion for the GMP on the hallway?
It's the same 2 weeks because the hallway and electrical power upgrade go hand in hand.
So with Scott's absence, do you still feel that 2 weeks is adequate, or does that need another week?
Because we don't have an electrical power requirement for the HVAC, it makes me nervous on the 2 weeks, but I think with Andy's conversation with the design team tomorrow, that might alleviate some of it, but I would suspect they don't have a power plan done or even started.
Oh,
That's what he's supposing, but we don't know for sure.
So if the cold shell GMP is not approved this evening, that would require CB to reschedule the concrete, correct?
Correct.
And based on that, depending on their time frame, CB can still step in to do the concrete. Correct?
Correct.
But we run the risk of the GMP no longer being valid and having to possibly get updated numbers on that.
That's correct.
If the concrete contractors cannot respond in a timely fashion, what is the response time for CB? Because I mean, it's a crystal ball effect in terms of when the weather is going to turn wet around here. We don't know for sure.
Probably to get out there and put formwork, probably about a week, because we have staffing meetings every Thursday for the following week. So if it looks like, if say on like Monday or Tuesday, it looks like we have to step in and do this, then it would be the Monday of the following week. So yeah, about a week roughly.
I don't think that's a good thing.
I can't hear you.
I don't think that's a big deal for me
For a week out.
for a week out.
Well, we
That's
just
pending
won't
if we
warn
get
the
the-
weather.
Well,
Well, for me, so my hangup is, like we discussed last Thursday, we don't have the GMPs, and we really need those before we can proceed to anything. I understand we need to do this concrete work, but I mean, what if there's a lot of what ifs, so without the numbers, how do you move forward with what ifs? So that's my only issue.
I need to ask you a question.
Yeah.
For the last 2-3 weeks, you have been pretty hardcore about, we don't want to pour concrete and then end up with concrete that we can't use because we can't do the rest of it. But tonight I hear you weakening on that a little bit and feeling more comfortable. Is that
Mm-mm.
wrong?
that's wrong. My thing is still that we need the numbers to get a good idea what all this is gonna cost. I'm just telling everybody what could or could not happen, is what I'm saying.
So you're not comfortable with going forward with the soft shell?
So our goal
2
for our
weeks.
students in our school is electrical and HVAC, warm and dry.
Yep.
And that's what keeps going back to me. And if we can't provide that because we do a building that we can't finish, my opinion, we let them down.
That's where I'm at too.
So there was Nicole, are you able, we allowed Keenan from the bond committee to speak up. So is there a possibility for unmuting Jamie or Richard Olson? Because they had a question. I think it's best to come from them to ask the question. It may be directed towards you and
Sure.
the conversation with Scott.
You bet.
Hello. So a question that I have is, number one, can we proceed with concrete without the GMP signed?
I'm gonna.
That would be a question for the board. We would need a contract of some sorts so that we were bound together with the subs.
My next question is, what would it take to get a new electrical engineer? Because we do not really have time for personal conflict. We have a job to do. We need to get somebody that's not in a personal conflict to do the work. What does that look like?
16 weeks.
And I wonder if that Eric and, or Derek and Andy,
I did the same.
it's your fault.
Yes, my fault.
I wonder if that is a Scott question more than a you
It
guys
is.
question.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think so.
So.
Yeah.
I
What
think with that-
you're getting out of me is hearsay at best because it's been passed along by Scott. So I'm just trying to fill in the detailed portions of it. I don't need to go any further than that.
So,
I guess then Mr. Marshall, not Mr. Marshall, Mr. Gallagher, I would like to see, I think Richard and I would like to see pressure put on Scott to say if he cannot get his current engineer to comply, that we rush to find another, because we can't continue to face this kind of issue.
Every week.
and I think there's a second part of that too. Also, I think is what is the time frame of getting, what would it be a time frame of, is that, because there's a bigger picture to think of, in my opinion. If you get a new electrical engineer, do they have to do new drawings? Does it delay the entire
Right.
process and
Yeah.
all of the other pieces? Or do we go down a route of allowing Mr. Gallagher to have some very frank conversations with Mr. Marshall and our bond liaison to have those conversations, to direct him and support him in putting pressure on that electrical engineer also, you know.
Yeah.
I wonder if that is taking the path of the support and hard conversations is maybe where we might have better outcome. I just think that it's worth it's worth asking the questions, Jamie, and I appreciate you doing that because I think it's fair to ask them.
Good question.
In his defense, he has already, Scott has sounded very frustrated with the whole process. So I would think at some point this thought process has crossed his mind, but it's time to ask the hard questions and it's time to put the pressure on. And that's where I think we're at.
I agree. Anything else?
Can you go back to my books? You're not taking a note.
There?
Yes, so the action item that I just want to read what the action item is in case there's other questions that we want to ask. The action item this evening is to vote on if we are approving the VOC Center GMP that was provided for the cold shell last board meeting. So with that and the additional dates, I think we've heard Ryan's opinion. I'm gonna just say, Derek, Andy, you shared some opinions last meeting, which I think we found to be very beneficial. So I will say that, do you have an opinion? I'll ask you just that, if you have an opinion that you'd like to share with us on guidance and things like that for us to consider.
Personally, on my side, I'm one who likes to see progress moving forward and taking one baby step by taking out the asphalt where the hallway was going to go. And then taking another baby step, if you would, a little bigger one with the excavation for the VOC, and not being able to move forward with that is an extremely frustrating position. And I understand from your point of view and what you're charged with doing for the community, you have to do what's right on the fiduciary level. My fear is that we're going to get into wet conditions. It's going to create issues on the negative side. I don't want to see issues on the negative side. I want to keep this thing going forward. I want to keep it positive. I want to get it done as quick as possible and at the most effective cost for the district.
Derek, anything that you have for us?
No, I'll kind of second what Andy said. I mean, you guys as the board need to do what's best for the community and the school first and foremost. So I essentially support whatever decision you guys want to make. It is nice to see progress on the site, but at the same time, there is a lot of, I shouldn't say a lot of financial risk, but there certainly is financial risk with a budget that's very tight and not knowing what all the components are for these 4 different projects.
I appreciate your guys' candidness and answering questions. Does the board have any additional questions for any of them?
No.
All right. That takes us to our action item to make a decision on if the board wants to approve the VOC Center for the GMP. Sorry, the GMP for the VOC Center.
Cool.
So I will make a motion to halt on approving the VOC Center GMP until all GMP bids come in for electrical, HVAC, and the hallway power panel.
I second that.
Discussion, I'm gonna heed my discussion and start with you, Deb. Do you have any discussion that you'd like to go through with that?
I would just like to hold to everything until we get all the GMPs as well.
Robert? Brian?
Same.
Linda?
Can we put an approximate date on that poll when we would expect to hear back? Or not?
I don't think we can,
They said 2 weeks, but
maybe.
we have
Maybe.
to.
Maybe.
Maybe I should, maybe the motion should read pending further information. I mean,
I just don't want to keep going on and on and on and say, well, we can't do it now. And we are sitting here again. And we gotta wait another week. I'm kind of done with that. We've made progress, but we haven't made enough progress.
I don't disagree with you. I think, well, I'll wait for my discussion. So I think, I don't disagree with
Okay,
you.
I'm done. I needed to say that. It's discussion time. I get to say that.
It's okay. So, Mr. Gallagher, I
Mhm.
feel this way, that we need to see these numbers. I agree with some of the discussion that came in. We did sit here and speak with some very knowledgeable people. And, you know, they made the comment that sometimes the progress isn't showy, but I would say this board's made progress in the last 2 meetings, huge progress to ask
Mhm.
good questions.
Mhm.
I would also say that the community as a whole has pushed us to really stick to the priorities. If those priorities are electrical, HVAC, and the power panel, in order to support that
Mhm,
HVAC,
mhm.
that's where we want to see those GMPs to be able to approve this to move forward. It's my opinion that I need you to work with our bond liaison to really put some strong pressure
Mhm.
on all entities. And if that means that Mr. Marshall needs assistance from you in those strong pressures, that we identify that and work with them to do that. That's where I'm at. And also, again, I'll just thank Derek and Andy for the candid conversation and allowing us to ask questions.
And given that Mr. Gallagher's going to be on vacation starting tomorrow,
Mhm.
that's going to set us back at least a week.
Also Scott.
So
Well,
Scott,
Scott's
Yeah,
not
I
even
mean-
here to talk to.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Is Scott gone all week this week?
I don't know. This is the first
That-
time.
That was the word that I got back. But because Scott's not there, doesn't mean that we are going to stop our efforts behind the scenes to reach out to the, you know, the guys that are doing the work in the office. My contact over there who got me the drawings is the first call I make in the morning. That's not going to stop.
So will you please just let us know if you make any progress at all?
Sure.
I will let you
so
know.
he will, they'll talk to
They'll be
Scott.
talking to me.
And I know that he's on vacation, but he'll have service here and there
Mhm.
that he can keep the board updated.
Yep.
I think this is sensitive and I know that you're on vacation and we want to let you enjoy your time off,
No
but
problem.
we need updates.
So, sorry, Andy. Sean sent me an email. He meets with them every Wednesday. So I think by next Wednesday, we could have a lot of answers
Mhm.
between this week and half of next week. If he's gone a week, that'll give him 2 or 3 days to
Mhm.
figure out what's going on. And we could sit down next Wednesday and do that.
And I'm-
And we have a board meeting that Thursday.
Yes,
It is. I was looking on my phone and it hasn't showed up yet. So
yes,
that would be next Thursday.
yes.
Good time.
So I'm gonna repeat, well, I'm gonna ask for any more discussion. Robert, Deb?
Nope.
Linda, Ryan?
Nope.
So I'm gonna repeat the motion. Nicole, correct me if I'm wrong. So the motion is to halt on approval of the VOC Center GMP for a cold shell until all GMPs can come in for the electrical HVAC and hallway electrical upgrade. Hallway panel. Motion was from me, from Rustine. There's a second by Deb. We will vote. Robert?
Yes.
Okay, Deb?
Yes.
Christine is a yes. Linda?
Yes.
Ryan?
Yes.
There are no further action items. That adjourns us at 19:10. Thank you
If I
very
could
much,
ask-
Derek and Andy.
Could I ask one real quick question of Sean?
Yeah,
If
go
you're
ahead.
gone, you're going to be out next week.
No,
For the rest of this week?
I'm just out the rest this week, but I should have mostly cell service, so don't be afraid to call me, text me, email me. I should be able to get access to
That was
communication.
gonna be my question. If we get some news that needs to be shared, what's the best
Yes.
means to get it to you so you can get it to the board?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Oh,
everyone.
Oh, wait,
yeah, when you CC me, make sure you CC Keenan too.
Okay.
Okay,
Will do.
and Ryan will keep you in the loop.
Yeah, I can.
Yeah,
thank you very much.
thank you.
Thanks.
So,
everybody.
Cole, can you change our adjourn to 1911, please? Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
I need to tell